With a good understanding of how the module system in Node works, we're now going to jump into another topic that's related to the module system, and that is the package system found inside of Node.js. So if we look up Node Package Manager, you should see npm.js pop up, and we're going to go to that website. Now, npm, the Node Package Manager, it helps us solve a problem very similar to what modules do inside of our code. Modules help us partition out different concerns into files of their own, and then allows us to include a file into another script when we need the code that is inside of that module. Packages do a similar thing. What they do is they allow us to take big chunks of code that are broken up into modules and handle different sub-concerns and package them up into reusable components that we can use across applications. So if we go back to our example of a Node module right here, we remember that within an application, we use modules to address these different concerns and pull them out, and then we allow those files to be pulled in when they're needed using the require statement. Another cool thing, though, is that when you're building applications, you can take your modules, all of this code that you have, that is grouped together by a bigger concern. So maybe we're creating something that has to do with writing and building user interfaces on Node. And we would have a whole bunch of source files that all contain modules with code in those modules that all have to do with generating a user interface. So we'll call this a UI package. Now this UI package is going to have a whole bunch of modules, and of course it's going to have your default index.js, which is the file that enters, that module or that package itself. And then of course it will pull in all the modules that it needs from the source code that belongs inside of that package. Well, when we write a UI package for our application, or if we write another package, let's go back to boxes here. If we write another package over here, and this package actually handles something different, so it doesn't handle UI, maybe it's a data access layer, and it knows how to access data. And we're going to go ahead and identify this as a data access layer or a DAL package. And of course, it's going to have its index.js, which allows it to be pulled into another application. And it's going to do the exact same thing as our package over here. It's going to go ahead and into that index.js that we've got, it's going to pull in all of its modules from its source code that it needs in order to execute. Well, as we're writing these for our application, a lot of times we will run into groups of code that we want to reuse across applications. So we may indeed have a complete application right here. And let's say that this is our, maybe it's a Express API. So we have an Express API application that we've got here. And then perhaps we have another application over here. And maybe this is just a good old-fashioned from scratch Node desktop app. Well, there's a good possibility that as we're writing these applications, we're going to end up building packages of modules that we could use across programs. And instead of rewriting all of that code inside of our applications again and again, we can wrap up that code into a package that we can then import and reuse in our applications, just like within an application we can import modules into another file. So it's just another layer of abstraction on top of that. And so if we have this DAL package, there is a good possibility that our Node desktop app has to hit a database, which means it's going to have a dependency on the DAL package. And our Express API, because these both work with the same data, it may have a dependency on the DAL. Whereas our Node application, because it's a desktop application, it most likely has a dependency on our UI package. But since our Express app is full-blown a web API that just passes JSON back and forth, it probably doesn't have a dependency on the UI package. And then as we're writing the desktop app and we're writing the Express app, there's a good possibility that we may actually end up building more code that has to do with something specific to both applications and takes care of another concern that we might have. And that may be something like, if we've got an Express AP and we've got a Node application, we might actually need some kind of a business logic layer. Something that validates the data that we are using and consuming and modifying. And we may want to make sure that both of these applications operate on that business logic the same. And therefore, instead of writing separate logic here and separate logic here, we may just include the business logic as a dependency within our applications. So this gives us kind of an overview of how we go from modules within scripts being imported in order to separate concerns and reduce complexity and allow reuse of code. But then we go up another layer and we say within an application, we may need to reuse these groups of modules in something that we could reuse or package up and reuse inside our applications. So then we move to what we call a package. Hopefully that helps you understand package. So Node Package Manager is actually a utility that gets installed with Node when you install it, and it allows you to pull into your application your own packages that you create, just like we had in our example, or packages made by third parties. So we can actually search all of the Node packages that are out there, and we can search by a keyword. So maybe database. We can look at database and see what kind of database NPM packages are out there where somebody, a third party, someone else, has written a whole lot of code that is reusable and has posted it out for the entire community to use in their own projects. So like here, Mongoose. Mongoose is a data access layer where it maps documents to objects inside of your app, and it takes care of the communication between your application and a MongoDB database. It's a really useful package, and we will be using Mongoose in Express API applications that we build in a little while. So this is an example of somebody having written a data access layer, made it generic enough that it knows how to communicate with any application in any MongoDB database, and then they provided it available as a package that you could install and use within your application. So if we go back to our example here, and we look at this, these might be packages that we have written ourselves, but we can also pull in third-party packages that we didn't write. So we may actually request from the internet, so out here in the cloud on the internet, we may ask for the Mongoose DAL that's written by a third party, and we may say, all right, we've got our custom stuff, and then maybe our Express app uses Mongoose to talk directly to the database, and maybe our Node desktop application uses Mongoose, and then we stop using this custom DAL right here, and we just get rid of that custom DAL. And now we're using Mongoose to take care of data access within both of our applications, and we're allowing a third party to take care of maintaining that code. And so instead of having our own data access layer that we have to manage and maintain, we can now actually get rid of this one, get rid of it so we don't have to deal with it. And we can just rely on this third-party one called Mongoose in order to get data into our applications. So this is how Node Package Manager works. Extremely useful utility for us. Definitely going to the website and doing a search for packages for anything that you might need or want when it comes to code. And it's probably a good idea to do a research on NPM packages before you start writing the code yourself custom. That way you're not reinventing the wheel. So Mongoose. We also have a MySQL package and Postgres for Postgres database, an SQLite database, Firebase if you want to use Firebase. Anyways, depending upon the technologies you are using, make sure you go to NPM and see if there's a package that exists first before you begin trying to write and bundle your own packages. NPM is extremely useful as we build complex applications.